Okay, good morning. We want to talk about herbicide evaluation for registration. Now, the herbicides which are used in Zimbabwe, they have to be registered. Of course, they are produced by agrochemical companies. But before they can be used by farmers, there is a process which has to be done. And this is what we are going to talk about. Of course, the herbicide has to be evaluated for its usefulness, its efficacy. Does the herbicide control weeds? Which weeds are controlled? Is it safe for use in crops? What dosages should be used? Things like that needed to be documented. So normally what happens is that an agrochemical company which can be based in Zimbabwe may probably want to use a new product in a crop. Now what it does, that company may also try to evaluate it, because most of these herbicides are actually imported from other countries, especially from Europe, US. Now we have some from Asia and probably India. So the other institution which does this work is the Department of Research and Specialty Services, where we have the weed research team, which is being based at Henderson Research Station. One of the functions of that team is to evaluate herbicides. So whether it is being done by the company, agrochemical company, or the government institute, they use more or less the same procedures which we wanted to talk about. Now, for any new product or herbicide, before it is evaluated for its efficacy, we need basic information from the herbicide technical data sheets. Now there should be some information from the manufacturers of that or producers of that herbicide. What rates are they proposing, the dosage rates, in order to kill weeds? They should have done some basic work on that issue. What sort of crops should we use this herbicide? The types of weeds which are controlled. Now globally, weeds are different. We have temperate weeds, we have got tropical weeds, but we can classify weeds according to, basically we can have grasses, broadleaves, and sedges. If the herbicide is killing broad-leaved weeds in Europe, maybe it's likely to kill other broad-leaved plants in the tropics. We need information on time of application. For example, is it pre-plant incorporated? Is it a pre-emergence herbicide or a post-emergence herbicide? Once we have this information, then we can design procedures to evaluate this herbicide. Still on the basic information from herbicide technical data sheet, we may want to know the chemistry of the product. This is when we want to see the chemical structure, so that it can tell us about the activity of this herbicide either in plants or in the environment. We also wanted to know the toxicity, LD50. How poisonous is this product, so that on registration it is given an appropriate class or category in terms of its toxicity. Solubility is also important. It could tell us something on the leaching properties of this product. Things like vapor pressure is also important. It can tell us about the stability of this herbicide after application. Can we easily lose it into the atmosphere via volatilization? Solubility, it gives us an indication of its leaching properties. So basic information is usually obtained under glasshouse conditions and need to be verified under field conditions. The glasshouse work can be done by universities in collaboration with the chemical companies, or chemical companies who are producing the product could do these glasshouse studies. So let's suppose this product has now arrived at the institution, and the institution has gone through the basic information. That institution, which could be a local agrochemical company or it could be the government department, it has to do a field study or a field evaluation. Now the field evaluation should have an objective. Normally the objective is to determine the efficacy of the new herbicide for the control of weeds. It could be maize, for example, or it could be in any crop for that matter of interest. Because this is actually an experiment, it's not an observation. So there has to be materials and methods. How is it going to be evaluated? The site of the field evaluation is very important. We should choose a site with a wide spectrum of weeds. Also, soil type is important. Is it the red clays, sandy soils? Because once we apply the herbicide, soil can influence the activity, especially clay and organic matter From your previous lecture, you now know what adsorption is all about, and it can influence the activity of the herbicide. Also, some key weeds or problem weeds need to be, if they are not there at the site, we need to plant them in the research plots. But one of the problems is that of dormants. Sometimes these weeds may not germinate, but it's one of the things which can happen. The crop should also be grown at the recommended agronomic practices. So this is actually a field experiment to evaluate the efficacy of the new herbicide. We need to design or to propose the basic treatments which can guide us to obtain the information which we want from this new herbicide. For example, number one, treatment. We need the target rate from the chemical supplier. Those who are selling the product, at what rate are they proposing that herbicide should be used? If we want, we may increase the herbicide by 10% above the target rate, or reduce it by 10%, that is treatment 2 and 3, just in case there's an overdosage or under application. How does that chemical respond in killing weeds? Or probably we may not worry about treatment 2 and 3, but number 4 is very important, the standard herbicide. We are going to compare the new herbicide versus what is already being used to see whether we are going to get a better herbicide. And number 5, where we say the control, where we just do timely hand weeding. This treatment will enable us to evaluate crop phytotoxicity. Now, if we apply the herbicide, sometimes we may not see its effects visually, but when we harvest the grain yield, if it is maize, we want to see whether the grain yield has not been lowered. Now, in this case, probably we have 5 treatments. In order to properly evaluate this new product, you need a proper experimental design where treatments have to be replicated for at least 4 times. And an appropriate design has to be used. For example, for this kind of work, normally randomized block design is used. And the treatments have to be randomized, of course, in each block or replicate. This is an example of a plot where the herbicide can be sprayed. The plot has some components. What we call the net plot, that is the brown square, is where we can harvest the maize or the crop yield. Then we have 50 times 50 centimeter squares. This is where we can take weed data. It could be weed counts, weed weights, and so forth. And of course, the black boundary of the whole plot is what we call the gross plot. Now, the type of data which we need from this study is that we need what is known as crop phytotoxicity data and weed control efficacy, which we have to record, let's say, 1 week after herbicide application. Now, all over the world, we now use what is known as the EWRC, but sometimes other methods can be used. This is the European Weed Control Research Council, which had to sit down in order to standardize herbicide evaluation work so that it can be assessed from all over the world. This EWRC has got indication for crop phytotoxicity and weed control efficiency. It uses weed scores. So after herbicide application, we have got scores which are in green. Scores of 1 to 4. 1 being excellent weed control and 4 good weed control. Number 5, which is yellow, I hope you are seeing it. This is the boundary, the border. This is not, yeah, it can be acceptable. Then number 6, it's unacceptable weed control. We are now in the red. Number 7, slight herbicide effect. 8, poor weed control. There's number 9, which probably you are not seeing. Let me try to write. Number 9 means no effect. So we've got a scale from 1 up to 9 for weed scores. For crop scores, it's also 1 up to 9, but 1 to 5 means no phytotoxicity to acceptable phytotoxicity, which is good for the crop. 6, unacceptable phytotoxicity. Ranges from 7 to 9 in red. This is serious phytotoxicity. The crop data which we collect, things like date of emergence, this is phenological data, plant population, plant height, photographic images of crop phytotoxicity, flowering dates, maturity dates. Then grain yield is very important. Sometimes chemical companies, because they are in a rush, they may provide some other data on weed control, crop phytotoxicity, and leave grain yield. And they have problems in registering the products. Now, weed data normally we collect it from quadrats which are 50 times 50 centimeters. Sampled at 3 positions. This is systematic or random sampling. Weed species are to be taken from 50 times 50 quadrats and dry weights determined. So we can use weed counts, we can use weed weights. the data has to be analyzed. In most cases, we use an analysis of variance on the collected data. But in most cases, weed count data needs to be transformed before analysis of variance is done. But of course, when you have your data, you have to check whether the assumptions of the analysis of variance are being met by the data. There are various ways of doing it, but in most cases, from our experience, the data needs to be transformed. I won't go into details on that. Now, let's suppose you've analyzed your data. You now want to do a report. There are some questions which need to be addressed, which are tied to your objective of the field evaluation. One of the questions which you may ask is, does the new herbicide control weeds better than the standard practice or the standard herbicide? In order to answer this question, from your treatments, you are going to compare the effects from new herbicide versus standard herbicide. Normally we use the LSD value if the treatments were significant. You find the differences between the two treatments. If they exceed the LSD, then you know there's a significant difference. But this is where the statistics part of it. Number two is changing the recommendation rates by 10%, going to change the effectiveness of the herbicide, either going up or going down. The treatment comparison which you will need is you will need the recommended new herbicide, which is a treatment. It has to be compared to either plus or minus 10% of the recommended rate. The other question of interest is, which is very important now, is does the new herbicide cause phytotoxicity, which is reflected in crop yield? For this, in order to get this answer, you need to compare these treatments, new herbicide versus hand-weeded treatment control. If there are differences which are significant, it may, let's say, if the herbicide lowers the grain yield significantly, then there could be problems with the new herbicide. Now, this kind of experiment has to be done for 3 years or 3 seasons. In Zimbabwe, that is the recommendation. Once you pull data from 3 years, you can make a decision. If you are an agrochemical company, you start preparing documents for registration. We are not going to go into details of the registration process itself. Probably we will talk about it later when you do pesticide science. Now, the data on herbicide persistence is also obtained by growing sensitive crops at the trial sites, so that you have an indication of how long the herbicide is likely to remain active in the soil. Then soil samples could be collected from soil sites, and a number of crops could be tested under glasshouse conditions, so that we have an indication about the persistence of the herbicide. Now, when you prepare documentation for registration, you need the following information. You need to understand that within the Department of Research and Specialist Services, we have a registration officer, a pesticide registration officer. The current one did actually the same course which you did, who is based at the Department of Research and Specialist Services. And her job is actually to process registrations of all pesticides in the country. So the information which is required for registration is toxicological data. How toxic is the pesticide, so that it can be given a proper class. We can give it a red triangle, a green triangle, depending on how toxic it is. Experimental reports, which cover a period of 3 years of data collection, are required. Data on weed control efficacy and crop phytotoxicity is also required. Now, the pesticide registration officer may be overwhelmed by the information. So the pesticide registration officer is assisted by researchers within the department who can write information on the experimental data, so to quicken the process. Because people have to verify whether valid data is coming out from the experimental reports. Number 3, the proposed registration label showing how the herbicide is supposed to be used should actually be produced with information on dosages, crops, and the weeds controlled. So once that has been done, probably the registrar may approve the product or not. But once it is approved, then it can go on to the market. So this is it on the pesticide registration. Any questions on the herbicide registration? What you are simply saying is that the government of Zimbabwe has got procedures which have to be used for new products which come into the country. They have to be given certificates of registration before use. And the registration process starts from evaluation of the herbicides, which is done by people like you, probably working for government institutes or agrochemical companies. So this is the end of it. I'm expecting your assignments this week. By Friday I should have everything from you. Are you there?
Yeah, here though.
So this is the end of my lectures. What I now need from you are the outstanding assignments, so that I can mark them and give you the feedback as soon as possible. Any questions? Your paper will have 2 sections, right? The paper which you are going to write, is it next week? The first section will cover the weed biology and the ecology aspects. You will choose 2 questions from section A, but of course read the instructions. Pamunogona kuona zvakachinjaka, but it should be 2 questions from section A. Then per section B, you also answer 2 questions. There's a choice. You pick what you think is good for you. So from yeah, I think that is the, and I think it's 5. I will check. It could be 5 questions, but at least 2 from each question. So I think you will end up answering 5 questions. Each question 20 marks. Yeah.
When is the final exam, Doc?
When
is the final exam?
The final exam.
Mm-hmm.
Amusati maudzwa here?
Hatina kumboudzwa izvo.
Muchaudzwa zvenyu, but you should know that you do 3 weeks of where we teach you. Then the 4th week, that is when you expect to be examined. Ndo modular system ka.
Right. Talk. Ndafunga pamwe mukuziva dates next exam.
Aiwa, ndimnototanga kuriziva.
Okay.
Vanoku kana zvaaredi vanoningirira, but we will keep in touch tichitaurirana kuti zvaapapi.
Okay, Doc.
Pane zvimwe here zviri kukunetsai? Zvawandisa. Hello.
Exam rikaiswa kuna Friday.
Muri kuti rikaiswa kuna Friday muno zvinenge zviri nani? Itai ma-assignments. Mukapedza kuita ma-assignments, you can do the examination anytime. Because my assignments are supposed, ndo anokufosai kuti murevise. Muri kuiona strategy yacho?
Yeah, tinokuziona jo.
Pane vamwe vakazobuda muexamination vaakuridza mhere ka.
Tichaedza
Do
kuti
you know
tinorasa
kuti why? Because
kukonwa.
vakaiginwa maassignments. Vaiginwa maassignments aya nobva vasakana nawo muexam manje maassignments aya. Because vanga vasina kuaita hameni kuti vaifunga kuti kuchauya chii. Saka mukaita maassignments at least toziva kuti mune maane competence yacho inodiwa kuti muanze maningi questions. With control threshold munoiziva handiti?
Matibe chito.
With control threshold.
Takangoiona maassignments. I don't think takanyatsoita in detail.
Munozongondipa pamwe pokuti ndokuexplainerai futi.
Okay.
Not today, but pakati papapa munongondicontact toita meet, then I explain.
Okay, though.
Kune vanenge vasiri sure nayo, but vanenge vari sure nayo, I mean, there's no need.
Okay.
Because kana maakurevisa kana maita machallenges munokwanisa kundicontact to explain maissues acho. Handiti?
Yes, dog. Thank
Plus,
you.
pane mavideos akawanda mukatarisa pamaYouTube ipapa. Mamwe handisida kutumira. Munogona kutsvaka, munogona kuiwana futi information yema-with control thresholds.
Ewe.
Muchiisa malikes ipapo. Handiti?
Let's talk.
That's it.
Alright, saka ine airuba available ndo lecture yangu yekupedzisira nemi. I think you'll have time yakawanda yekuti muite prepare murevise. Munorevisa muchiitawo maassignments acho. Because maassignments anokubatsirai maassignments ndeyekuti mukwanise kurevise tichikuasesaiwo futi coursework. Saka anokubatsirai mukatarisa ari designed like exam papers so that when you come in hamuzoonetsekana. Okay.
Okay, talk my tabas.
All right.
Thank you.